When you create a design, it is sometimes useful to add guidelines. There are three types of guidelines available: horizontal, vertical, and diagonal. Before adding guidelines, make sure they will be visible by going to the View menu and make sure there's a check mark by Guidelines. When there is a hoop on the screen, guidelines are automatically placed at the edge of the hoop and down the center. These hoop guidelines cannot be moved. To add a guideline, right-click on the ruler and select Add New Guideline. Choose the type of guideline you wish to add. You can also right-click and select the guideline, and it will be added wherever you right-clicked. To add a horizontal guideline, right-click, select Add New Guideline, and then add a horizontal guideline. If I want to add another horizontal guideline, again, right-click, Add New Guideline, and Horizontal. These guidelines can then be moved and placed wherever you want them within the hoop. To add a diagonal guideline, right-click, select Add New Guideline, and select Diagonal. The diagonal guideline will be inserted exactly in the position where you right-clicked on the ruler. You can reposition it by clicking and dragging it from the middle. If you're too far from the center, you'll have a rotation icon, and then you can rotate the guideline. If you hold the Control key down while rotating, it will snap every 22.5 degrees. If you hold the Alt key while dragging and moving guidelines, they will snap on every step of the grid if the grid is enabled. Remember, to enable the grid, go to View and place a check mark by Grid. And now the guideline will snap. Holding the Shift key will cancel all snapping abilities. Use this when you want to move the guidelines freely. To delete a guideline, click and drag it back to the ruler. Guidelines cannot be locked to do this. To accurately place the position of any guidelines, right-click and select Guideline Editor. In this dialog box, you can place the guidelines in a specific location. You can also lock them, delete them, or hide them. You'll select the guideline by clicking on the row and then change the position to a specific number. The number can be either positive or negative. For diagonal guidelines, you can specify the angle, and you can also specify the position on the X and the Y axis. When you're finished, click on Close. After placing the guidelines in specific locations, right-click on the ruler and select Guideline Options. In Options, you can hide the guidelines or lock the guidelines. You can also make them snap enabled. Notice that the color of the guidelines changed when I locked the guidelines. In the Tools and Options and the Colors and Sizes tab, you have normal guidelines and you have locked guidelines. That way you'll know if the guidelines have been locked. When Snap Enabled is activated, you can create an object and then move the object, and it will snap to a guideline. Remember, if you choose to move a guideline, you're going to have to unlock them by going back to Guideline Options and unchecking Lock Guidelines. You're then free to move the guidelines as you wish.